Welcome back on this Friday. Now to a follow-up on a story we brought you last week. With the brutal cold we're experiencing here in Western Mass, it is crucial to keep your pets safe and warm. Western Mass News reporter Reagan Lockery getting answers from a local animal rescue on the legal consequences that could follow if you leave your pets outside in the cold.
If folks can just stay bundled up inside with their animals the next day, that would be the best thing.
Cold weather affects animals just like it does people. They can become dehydrated, hypothermic, or develop frostbite, just like us. Which is why during extreme cold, it's crucial to monitor pets' behavior.
Our local ordinance has some very strong language in it that prevents folks from leaving their animals unattended outside during a weather watch, advisory, or warning, which is what we have in effect right now because of the extreme cold.
During freezing temperatures, it's important not to leave your pet outdoors alone for their safety. Western Mass News is getting answers on the legal repercussions pet owners could face if their dog is left outside alone.
Hannah Ornstein is the animal control supervisor at Thomas J. O'Connor Animal Rescue in Springfield. She tells Western Mass News during extreme conditions, they try to take a proactive approach and communicate with owners about keeping their animals indoors. Failure to do so comes with serious penalties.
You can face citations up to $500, removal of your animal, and potentially cruelty charges depending on the situation.
And that includes cold cars. Ornstein explains in extreme cases, it is legal in Massachusetts for animal control officers to break a window if they notice an animal in distress.
We're very conservative when we take those measures. We do not want to enter anyone's property and certainly not cause damage without police present and unless the animal is absolutely in dire circumstances. So that is really the extreme end of things.
While TJO does ask the community to be their eyes and ears in the neighborhood, they do not recommend taking measures into your own hands.
Don't take that liability on yourself. And also when animals are distressed, they can react erratically. So we don't want somebody to harm themselves accidentally or an animal because there's high tension in a situation.
Instead, Ornstein asked that if you see an animal in need, to call TJO or the police. She adds, if you own an Arctic breed that thrives in the cold, it's still recommended to keep walks outdoors to a minimum in frigid weather.
We take that into consideration when we're talking to folks. We know that there's some animals that this weather is their prime. They love this. That being said, the ordinance does not take breeding into consideration. Really, you don't want your animal to be outside in this extreme cold.
Ornstein also asked pet owners to keep in mind the risk they themselves face in the cold when walking their pet, as well as animal control officers out rescuing pets in these conditions. Reporting for Western Mass News, I'm Reagan Lockery.